The TASFA is a form used by students who are not eligible for federal financial aid, but may be eligible for state financial aid in Texas. If a student is eligible for federal financial aid, he or she should complete the FAFSA. Throughout this video, we assume the person completing the TASFA is not federal aid eligible. This video will provide a quick look at some of the important points for students when applying for financial aid to help pay for college using the TASFA, the Texas Application for State Financial Aid. In some cases, students may be classified as Texas residents, allowing these students to apply for state financial aid. Texas residency is determined at each college during the admissions process by the admissions office or the registrar's office. To be clear, by Texas residency, we are referring to a college admissions registrar term and not a legalization or documentation status. Here are the basic eligibility requirements for students to be classified as Texas residents that may make it possible to apply for state financial aid. The student must have graduated from a Texas high school or received a GED in Texas, lived in Texas 3 years prior to graduating high school or receiving a GED, must reside in Texas for at least 1 year leading up to college enrollment, and must sign a notarized affidavit of intent. Students meeting these requirements and who are classified as Texas residents by their college can apply for state financial aid. Most colleges in Texas use the TASFA for awarding financial aid to non-federal aid eligible students. To see if the college you want to attend accepts the TASFA, ask someone in the financial aid office of that college what form to use. If not the TASFA, most likely they will have you complete a paper FAFSA, or they may have their own online version of the TASFA. It's also important to know that in addition to the TASFA or FAFSA, the college may require additional documents. Each college determines the information that it collects. Call or email the college you wish to attend to inquire what information is needed with your TASFA. Now let's look at each section of the TASFA. Step 1. The first section of the TASFA asks for basic student information like name, address, and email address. This section also asks for your Social Security number, although having a Social Security number is not a requirement. If you don't have a Social Security number, write NA. This section also asks for a college student ID. This is only for students that have been issued an ID by a college. If you do not have a college ID, write NA. Another question in Step 1 asks if you are a male or female. Remember, male students must register with the Selective Service System and can do so by going online to www.sss.gov. Students that have a Social Security number can submit electronically. Students without a Social Security number must complete the fillable registration form and mail it to the address provided on the form. It's important to know that you are not officially registered until your registration information is entered into a Selective Service registration file and you have been assigned a Selective Service registration number. Then, you will receive in the mail a registration acknowledgement letter and your Selective Service registration card. This registration acknowledgement card is your proof of registration with the Selective Service system. Keep this important document in your permanent files for future reference. The next section, Step 2, is about student dependency. If you answer yes to any question in this section, you will not need to provide information about your parents. But if you answered no to all the questions in Step 2, you will need to provide parental information in Step 3, even if you don't live with your parents. For purposes of this application, parents are defined as your birth or adoptive parents. Do not use the information of someone who is not your birth or adoptive parents, even if that person provides for you. If you have no contact with your parents, you should complete as much of the parental information as possible. Remember, prior to submitting the TASFA, you should ask a financial aid officer at the college you want to attend what additional information you need to submit. Step 4 is the Income Information section. If you earned income during the year, this is where you'll enter your income information. If you were required to enter parental information back in Step 3, you must also enter parental income information in Step 4. There is a section for the student earnings and a separate section for parent earnings. It's important to know that the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, requires you and/or your parents to file a tax return if either you or your parents meet the income thresholds established annually by the IRS. For more information regarding income thresholds, go to www.irs.gov and look at IRS Publication 17, Table 1-1, Filing Requirements for Most Taxpayers. Request an Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, or ITIN. People who do not have a Social Security number can apply for an ITIN using a W-7 tax form. For more information, go to www.irs.gov. Though it may not be required at the time you submit the TASFA, it's a good idea to request a copy of the Irs Tax Return Transcript if taxes were filed. The college may request this at a later date. You can request a tax return transcript at this web address. Remember, each college determines what information is submitted, and different colleges may have different requirements. Now on to Step 5. This is where you will list all the people in your household. If you answered no to all the questions in Step 2 and needed to provide parental information, you must include yourself, even if you don't live with your parents, and your parents' other children, even if they don't live with your parents. If your parents will provide more than half of their support during the academic year you are applying for aid. You must also include other people who live with your parents, if your parents will continue to provide more than half of their support through the academic year that you are applying for aid. An example of this might be a grandparent who lives with your parents and your parents provide their support. If you do not need to provide parental information, you should list yourself, your spouse if you're married, your children if you provide more than half their support, and anyone else in your house that you will provide more than half their support through the next academic year.
Then add yourself and anyone from the household that will be in college, but not your parents.
Finally, Step 6. Here's where you will sign the application. If you have provided parental information, one parent must also sign the application. Signing acknowledges that state financial aid will be used for education and education-related expenses, and that information provided is true to the best of your ability. To wrap up, here are some quick reminders. Apply for admission to the colleges you are considering. Confirm you are classified as a Texas resident by the colleges. Confirm the colleges you are considering accept the TASFA. Complete the TASFA. Make copies. Sign the TASFA and have one parent sign if required. Contact the colleges to inquire if supporting documents are needed. Make copies of supporting documentation if required. Mail a signed TASFA and copies of supporting documents to each college that you have applied to and are considering attending. Check your mail and email regularly. Respond to any correspondence as soon as possible. 2 to 4 weeks after submitting the TASFA, contact the colleges to confirm they've received your application and ask about next steps. If you have any questions, call or email the colleges. All done? Congratulations and best of luck in college!